The music floated through the grand hall and laughter sparkled like champagne glasses clinking together, but Elena sat at the edge of the celebration with her hands resting on her lap and her wheelchair slightly pushed back from the circle of dancers. She looked radiant in her emerald dress, her dark hair curled around her face, but her smile did not quite reach her eyes. She was the CEO of a rising tech empire, a woman who commanded boardrooms and silenced rooms with a single look, but here at the wedding of her closest friend she felt invisible. She had grown used to the way people glanced at her chair before meeting her eyes. She had built walls of steel around herself, promising that no one would ever see her as weak. She told herself she was enough. She told herself she had power. She told herself she did not need love. But tonight something cracked inside her. Watching couples twirl across the floor, she wished she could feel what they felt just for a moment. Her best friend, the bride, had begged her to come. She said, "Elena, you are family and family belongs here." But Elena wondered if she had made a mistake. She felt like an ornament tucked away in a corner. She kept sipping sparkling water, hoping it would keep her occupied. Her mind wandered through the maze of her life, the endless meetings, the stock market triumphs, the constant pressure of proving herself again and again. She had money, she had success, but she did not have someone to lean on, someone who saw her not as a headline, not as a chair, but as a woman. Across the hall, Daniel sat at a table near the back with his young daughter Lily. She was 6 years old, with curious eyes and a smile that melted even the hardest strangers. Daniel was a single father who had promised his little girl he would take her to this wedding because the bride was his cousin and family mattered, but he had not planned on the waves of loneliness that hit him as he watched people dancing. He had been alone for years since Lily's mother walked away, and every wedding, every romantic moment reminded him of that hollow space beside him. Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, why is that pretty lady sitting alone?" she whispered. Daniel followed her gaze and saw Elena. He recognized her instantly, though he doubted she knew him. Elena was the CEO whose name filled magazines and news, but in that moment she looked nothing like a headline. She looked human, fragile and lonely, and Daniel felt a tug in his chest. Lily whispered again, "Daddy, she looks sad." Daniel swallowed hard. He had always been shy around strangers and especially around powerful women, but something about the way Elena's hands were clasped together tightly as if she were holding herself from breaking made him rise from his chair. Before he realized what he was doing, he leaned down to Lily and said, "Stay here, sweetheart, I will be right back." He walked across the hall, weaving through tables, his heart thumping harder than it should. When he reached her, Elena looked up startled. He smiled nervously and said, "Hi, I am Daniel. I know we have never met, but would you be my date for tonight?" Her eyes widened. She blinked as if unsure she had heard correctly. A CEO like her was used to proposals of business and strategies, not invitations whispered under the glow of wedding lights. She hesitated, unsure if this was pity or something else. She had been pitied enough in her lifetime. She did not want sympathy, she wanted honesty. "Why?" she asked, her voice calm but curious. "Why would you ask me?" Daniel cleared his throat. "Because you look like you deserve to smile tonight, and because I would rather spend the evening with you than sit in the corner pretending not to be alone." Elena studied his face. He did not look rehearsed or polished like the men she usually met in suits. He looked genuine. His tie was slightly crooked, his hands calloused from real work, not boardroom gestures, and there was something in his eyes that spoke of quiet strength. For the first time in a long time, Elena laughed softly, a sound even she had not heard in months, and said, "Are you always this direct?" Daniel shrugged. "Only when it matters." She glanced at the dance floor, then at her wheelchair, then back at him. "Do you know what you are asking?" she said. "I do not dance." Daniel smiled gently. "That is fine. I do not either. I am terrible at it, but I do know how to sit beside someone and make sure they are not alone." Elena felt warmth spread through her chest like light through glass. She nodded slowly and said, "Then I accept." Daniel pulled a chair next to her and sat down. He told her about Lily, about being a father, about the messiness of life. Elena listened intently, sharing pieces of her own story, things she rarely told anyone, about how she lost her ability to walk in an accident years ago, about how she built her empire with determination but also with scars she kept hidden. The more they talked, the more the noise of the wedding faded into the background, and it felt like it was just the two of them in a room full of strangers. Lily eventually skipped over, her small hands clasped behind her back. She looked up at Elena with bright eyes. "Hi, I am Lily. You are very pretty." Elena's heart softened instantly. She leaned forward and said, "Thank you, Lily. You are very kind. Would you like to sit with us?" Lily nodded eagerly, climbing onto her father's lap, and soon the three of them were talking and laughing as if they had known each other longer than an hour. Elena felt something she had not felt in years, belonging, not because of status or position but simply because someone had chosen to sit beside her. As the night deepened, Daniel found himself stealing glances at her, marveling at the way her eyes lit up when she laughed. Elena caught him once, and instead of looking away he held her gaze, and she realized she was not invisible to him, not tonight, not to this man, and not to his little girl who leaned against her like she had been waiting for Elena all along. For the first time in so long, Elena did not feel like a CEO or a woman in a chair. She simply felt like Elena, and that was enough. The wedding music swelled as the couple shared their first dance and the hall shimmered with candlelight, but Elena barely noticed. She sat beside Daniel and Lily, feeling as if her world had shifted by a fraction of an inch, just enough to let something new slip in. She found herself smiling without forcing it, her shoulders lighter than they had been in years. Daniel leaned closer, his voice low so only she could hear. "Thank you for saying yes. I was nervous." Elena tilted her head. "You nervous about me?" she teased softly, her lips curving. Daniel chuckled. "Of course you are Elena Rivera, the CEO every magazine talks about, and yet here you are sitting with me and my little girl." Elena's eyes softened. "But tonight I am just Elena, no titles, no headlines." They spoke for what felt like hours. Lily interrupted, often with questions about Elena's favorite colors, about whether she liked cats or dogs, about what her favorite story was. Elena answered each one with warmth, and Daniel watched stunned. He had seen Elena on TV, sharp, witty, decisive, but here she was leaning toward his daughter, telling her about how she once had a dog who used to steal her shoes. He had not seen this side of her, and it pulled at something deep inside him. Later, as the music softened, Daniel asked quietly, "Would you like to step outside for some fresh air?" Elena hesitated, then nodded. He pushed her chair gently through the wide doors into the cool night. The garden was strung with lights glowing like stars fallen to earth. Crickets sang in the distance. The air smelled of roses. Elena closed her eyes, breathing deeply. "Thank you," she whispered. Daniel leaned against the railing beside her. "For what?" She opened her eyes, "meeting me here instead of pitying me." Daniel frowned. "Why would I pity you?" "Because of the chair," she said flatly. "Most people do, even when they pretend not to." Daniel crouched so he was level with her gaze. "I do not see a chair. I see a woman who built an empire when most people would have given up. I see strength. I see someone I would be proud for my daughter to learn from." Elena's throat tightened. She had not expected such raw honesty. It was easier to deflect, but his words slipped past her defenses. She asked quietly, "And what about you, Daniel? What do you want?" He exhaled, staring at the lights. "I want someone who sees me too, not just a man raising a daughter alone, not just someone who is always strong for everyone else. I want someone who will let me be vulnerable." Elena's gaze lingered on him longer than she meant, her chest rising with something unfamiliar and frighteningly tender. They returned inside, and when the music shifted to a slower song, Daniel surprised himself. He reached for her hand. "May I?" Elena blinked. "You just said you do not dance." He smiled crookedly. "I said I am terrible at it, but with you maybe I want to try." She stared at him a long moment, then slowly placed her hand in his. He guided her chair to the edge of the dance floor, and instead of stepping away, he bent, lowered his body until his movements matched hers. Together they swayed slowly to the music, not perfect, not traditional, but something real. People watched, but for once Elena did not care. She felt Daniel's steady presence, his fingers laced with hers. Lily clapped happily from the table, shouting, "Daddy and pretty lady are dancing." Elena laughed, and the sound mingled with the music. As the night ended, Daniel walked her to her car. He hesitated, not wanting to let go. She looked up at him, her lips parted as if to say something, then stopped instead. She whispered, "Good night, Daniel, and thank you." He squeezed her hand. "Good night, Elena." That night Elena lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The echo of his words lingered in her mind. "I see a woman who built an empire. I see strength." No one had ever said it like that, not without an agenda, not without pity. She felt a strange ache she did not know she could still feel. The days that followed were busy, meetings, calls, deadlines, but her mind kept drifting back to Daniel and Lily. She told herself it was just kindness, it was just one evening, but when an email from the bride came with photos, Elena saw the one of her and Daniel on the dance floor, his hand holding hers, her laughter unguarded, and something in her chest ached. Daniel, on the other hand, tried to focus on work at his small architecture firm, but Lily would not let him forget. "Daddy, when can we see the pretty lady again?" she asked nearly every day. He chuckled. "I do not know, sweetheart, maybe someday," but inside he hoped someday would come soon. Someday came faster than either expected. Elena received an invitation to a charity event hosted by the same family. She knew Daniel might be there. Her first instinct was to decline. She did not want to feel vulnerable again, but then she remembered his words, his honesty, so she went dressed in simple elegance, her chair polished, her resolve wavering. She saw him across the room, tall in a navy suit, Lily clinging to his hand. Their eyes met across the crowd, and the noise of the hall seemed to fade. Daniel excused himself and came over, his smile nervous but warm. "I was hoping I would see you here." Elena felt the corners of her mouth lift. "And I was hoping the same." They spent the evening together again, talking, laughing, and slowly discovering corners of each other's lives. Elena admitted her fears of never being loved beyond her success. Daniel admitted the nights he cried quietly so Lily would not hear. By the end of the night their walls had crumbled enough that when he walked her out she whispered, "Would you like to have dinner with me sometime?" Daniel smiled, "Yes, very much." Dinner turned into more dinners, dinners into long walks, talks into shared secrets, and soon Elena found herself visiting Daniel's home. Lily would run into her arms shouting, "Elena, Elena," her little arms wrapping tightly around her neck. Elena had never thought children would like her. She had feared they would only see the chair, but Lily saw none of that. She only saw the woman who listened to her stories and helped with her drawings. Weeks turned into months and their bond deepened. Daniel found himself falling for Elena, not because she was powerful, not because she was beautiful though she was, but because she was real. She listened, she cared, she had a heart bigger than her empire, and Elena found herself falling for him because he never treated her like less, never like more, just as herself. One evening as they sat on his porch watching Lily play with fireflies, Daniel turned to her, his voice trembling. "Elena, I do not know how to say this, but I think I am falling in love with you." Her heart raced. She had faced billion-dollar negotiations without flinching, but these words shook her. She whispered back, "I think I am falling too." Daniel leaned closer and their lips met, soft, tentative, but filled with years of longing. Love grew not overnight but in steady steps, like bricks carefully laid, building a foundation that neither of them had expected. One day Elena wheeled into a board meeting, her phone buzzing. It was a text from Daniel with a picture of Lily holding flowers. The caption read, "For you are Elena." Her heart swelled and she realized she had found what she had been missing, not success, not validation, but love. Months later at another wedding, this time not as a lonely guest but as a woman in love, she sat at the table, Daniel beside her, Lily curled in her lap. When the music began, Daniel looked at her and whispered again, "Will you be my date?" Elena smiled, her eyes shining always. And this time she was not invisible, not forgotten, not alone. She was seen, cherished, and loved by the man who changed everything simply by asking one brave question that night, "Will you be my date?"